Every night across Britain in the 1950s, working-class mothers performed a quiet miracle. They turned a handful of cheap ingredients into suppers that no restaurant could match. Not because the ingredients were special, because the cooking was. Slow braises in heavy pots, dripping so flavorful it made grown men close their eyes. Puddings that turned stale bread into something children begged for. These were meals born from necessity, perfected by instinct, and destroyed by convenience. Number 14 on this list was so good that a London chef recently put it on a menu at £22 a plate. Your nan made it for sixpence. And number 1 was the meal that entire streets could smell 3 doors down. Let us count them down. Number 30. Fried bread and bacon with brown sauce. Before cereal boxes colonized the breakfast table, supper in many homes was breakfast served at 6 o'clock. Thick slices of white bread were fried in bacon fat until the outside turned golden and crunchy, while the center stayed soft and soaked through with dripping. 2 rashers of back bacon, curled and crisp at the edges, were laid across the top with a zigzag of HP sauce. It was a meal that cost barely a shilling and took less than 10 minutes to make. The bread absorbed every drop of flavor from the pan. Children fought over who got the fattiest slice, the one that had sat longest in the rendered bacon grease. Mothers stood at the stove, turning bread with a fish slice, knowing that this simple plate would stop the complaints and fill every belly before bedtime. No restaurant has ever managed to replicate what a mother's frying pan did to a slice of Hovis and a few rashers of streaky. The fat, the salt, the crunch. It was perfection dressed in brown sauce. Number 29. Sardines on toast. A tin of sardines cost 5 pence in 1953. Your mother would open the tin, mash the fish with a fork, spread it thick across hot buttered toast, and slide it under the grill until the edges bubbled and browned. The kitchen filled with a salty, smoky warmth that meant supper was seconds away. A squeeze of lemon, if there was one. A shake of pepper always. Children ate it with their fingers, peeling back the crispy top layer to find the soft, oily fish beneath. It was fast, cheap, and deeply satisfying. Sardines were packed with protein, calcium, and omega-3, long before anyone knew those words. Your grandmother just knew they were good for you because her children slept well after eating them. Number 28. Cheese and onion pie. Housewives across the Midlands and the North made this pie when the meat money had run out by Thursday. A simple short-crust pastry filled with sliced onions, softened in butter, and layered with strong cheddar, the sharpest they could afford. It was baked until the pastry turned flaky and the cheese melted into golden strings that stretched from plate to fork. A whole pie cost less than 2 shillings to make and fed a family of 5. Served with pickled beetroot and a few boiled potatoes, it was a meal that proved meat was not always necessary. The onions turned sweet and silky in the oven, mixing with the sharp tang of cheese into something far greater than the sum of its parts. Number 27th. Faggots and peas. The butcher's answer to waste, faggots were balls of minced pork liver, heart, and belly, mixed with breadcrumbs, sage, and onion, wrapped in caul fat, and baked in rich gravy until the outsides crisped and the insides stayed soft and herby. In the Black Country, faggot shops stayed open past 9 on Fridays, serving them straight from battered trays with mushy peas and thick gravy ladled over the top. A plate cost 1 shilling and 6pence. Children queued in the cold, breath steaming, while the smell of sage and onion drifted through the doorway. Every family swore their local shop made the best. Every family was right. The supermarket versions that arrived decades later, shrink-wrapped and lifeless, were an insult to the originals. Number 26. Chips and gravy. not from a chippy. From the kitchen. Your mother peeled potatoes, sliced them thick, and fried them in beef, dripping until the outsides shattered and the insides turned fluffy and white. Then she made gravy from the roasting tin, scraping up the brown bits from Sunday's joint, adding a splash of water and a crumble of oxo. Those chips, doused in proper gravy and eaten at the kitchen table with bread and butter on the side, were better than anything a restaurant could plate up with truffle oil and parmesan. The secret was the dripping. Always the dripping. Vegetable oil never came close. Number 25th, egg and chips. The fallback supper of every working-class household. 2 eggs fried in lard until the whites crisped at the edges and the yolks stayed runny, served alongside a mountain of hand-cut chips and a doorstep slice of white bread to mop up the yolk. In 1955, eggs cost about 4p each, and a bag of potatoes lasted the week. This was the meal mothers made when the cupboard was bare and the wages had not stretched far enough. Yet it was the supper children asked for most. That combination of crispy, salty chips dipped into warm, golden yolk, the bread soaking up every last drop. No seasoning needed beyond salt and vinegar. Simple, honest, and better than anything served on a white tablecloth. Number 24. Corned beef fritters. Your mother sliced corned beef thick, dipped each piece in a simple batter of flour, egg, and milk, and fried them until golden and crunchy. Served with chips and baked beans, it turned a 6p tin of Argentine beef into something almost celebratory. The batter sealed in the salty, savory meat, while the outside turned impossibly crisp. Children ate them with their fingers, dunking each fritter into a pool of tomato ketchup. The trick was getting the oil hot enough so the batter puffed immediately on contact. Too cool, and they turned greasy. Your mother knew the temperature by ear, by the sound of that first sizzle. She never needed a thermometer. Number 23. Scotch broth. A handful of pearl barley, a scrag end of mutton, and whatever root vegetables the larder could spare went into the pot on Monday morning and simmered until the kitchen windows ran with condensation. By tea time, the broth had thickened into something halfway between soup and stew, the barley swollen and tender, the mutton falling apart into shreds. In Scotland, it was the backbone of the working week. In northern England, it went by other names, but followed the same principle. A few pennies worth of ingredients, a long, slow cook, and a pot that could be stretched across 2 or 3 days with the addition of water and a fresh potato. The flavor deepened each day. By Wednesday, it was magnificent. Stale bread that should have gone to the birds was transformed into a dessert that made children abandon their manners. Mothers layered buttered slices with currants and sultanas, poured over a custard of eggs, milk, and sugar, then baked until the top turned golden and crisp, while the center stayed soft and custardy. A grating of nutmeg across the top, a jug of warm custard on the side. The whole pudding cost less than £1 to make, and every crumb was scraped from the dish. In homes where waste was a moral failing, bread and butter pudding was salvation. It turned guilt into glory. Number 21. Welsh rarebit. Not cheese on toast, something far more refined. Your mother melted strong cheddar with a splash of beer, a teaspoon of mustard, and a dash of Worcestershire sauce, then spread the thick, bubbling mixture over toast and grilled it until the top blistered and browned. The cheese puffed and turned almost soufflé-like in places, crisp at the edges, molten in the center. Served with pickled onions and a cup of strong tea, it was a supper that cost pennies but tasted like something from a gentleman's club. The mustard and beer lifted the cheese into another dimension entirely. No modern cheese toastie has ever come close. Number 20. Liver and onions. Lamb's liver sliced thin, dusted in seasoned flour, and fried fast in a screaming hot pan with lard. 30 seconds on each side, no more. Then it was smothered in soft, sweet onions that had been cooking low and slow for half an hour. Served on a bed of creamy mashed potatoes, with thick onion gravy poured over the top. The liver had a mineral richness that nothing else could match, and the sweet onions balanced it perfectly. Mothers knew that timing was everything. Too long in the pan and the liver turned to shoe leather. Too short, and it bled across the plate. That instinct, that knowing without a timer or a recipe book, produced a plate that modern gastropubs charge £14 for and still cannot get right. Number 19. Shepherd's pie, made from Monday's leftover lamb, minced or shredded, mixed with onion, carrot, and leftover gravy, topped with a thick layer of mashed potato and baked until the peaks turned golden and the filling bubbled at the edges. The crust of browned potato was the prize. Children scraped it off and ate it first, leaving the soft, savory filling for last. Every household had its own version. Some added a dash of Worcestershire sauce. Others stirred in leftover peas. The best ones had a layer of cheese melted under the potato crust, a secret upgrade that never appeared in any recipe book, but was whispered between mothers at the school gates. Number 18. Toad in the hole. 3 or 4 fat pork sausages nestled into Yorkshire pudding batter and baked until the batter rose golden and crisp around them. The trick was preheating the tin with dripping until it smoked, then pouring in the batter and listening for that ferocious sizzle. The edges climbed the sides of the tin, turning almost biscuit hard, while the center stayed soft and pillowy, soaked through with sausage fat and flavor. Served with onion gravy, it turned a few bangers into a feast. The corner pieces were fought over with a ferocity that bordered on violence. Every mother claimed her batter recipe was the best. Every mother was right. Number 17. Bubble and squeak, a fried leftover supper. On Monday, cold potatoes and leftover cabbage from the Sunday roast were mashed together and fried in dripping until the bottom formed a dark, crunchy crust. The smell of frying cabbage divided opinion, but the taste united every plate. Fathers claimed the brown bits. Children avoided the green. Mothers ate whatever was left standing. The name came from the sound it made in the pan, hissing and crackling as the vegetables hit the hot fat. A fried egg on top turned it into a proper supper. The whole meal cost nothing because it was made entirely from leftovers, and yet it tasted better than half the things money could buy. Number 16. Tinned salmon fish cakes. A tin of pink salmon, drained and mixed with cold mashed potato, a beaten egg, and a handful of chopped parsley, shaped into patties and fried in butter until golden on both sides. The outside crackled and crunched, while the inside stayed soft and flaky with fish. Served with salad cream and a few leaves of lettuce, it was the summer supper that appeared on tables from June through September. A tin cost about £1 and made 8 fish cakes, enough for the whole family. The trick was chilling the mixture before frying, so the cakes held together in the pan. Your mother learned that from her mother, who learned it from hers. Number 15. Bacon and cabbage. A joint of boiling bacon was soaked overnight to draw out the salt, then simmered for hours with carrots and a whole cabbage wedged around it. The cabbage absorbed the smoky, porky liquor and turned sweet and tender. Sliced thick at the table, the bacon was moist and yielding, nothing like the dry, overcooked rashers of modern kitchens. The cooking liquid became the basis for soup the next day. Nothing wasted. In the 1950s, a bacon joint cost about £3 and fed a family for 3 days across different meals. That kind of economy is what made working-class cooking extraordinary. Number 14. Oxtail stew, slow-braised, gelatinous richness. This was the dish so good that London chefs have rediscovered it at £22 a plate. Your grandmother bought oxtail for pennies. She browned the pieces in dripping, added onions, carrots, and a bay leaf, then braised the lot in the oven for 4 hours until the meat slid from the bone and the sauce turned thick and glossy with natural gelatin. The marrow melted into the gravy, giving it a richness that no stock cube could replicate. Children sucked the bones clean. Fathers went quiet with satisfaction. The stew was even better the next day, when the fat solidified on top and could be scraped off, the flavors beneath having deepened overnight into something almost otherworldly. Number 13. Steak and kidney pudding. Suet pastry lined a pudding basin filled with chunks of braising steak and lamb kidneys in thick gravy, sealed with a pastry lid, and steamed for 3 hours. The pastry turned translucent and glossy, soaked through with meat juices, while the filling inside became impossibly tender. Turning out the pudding was a moment of ceremony. The basin was inverted onto a plate, the cloth removed, and that golden dome sat steaming while the family waited. The first cut released a rush of fragrant steam and rich, dark gravy. No restaurant has ever matched the drama or the flavor of a properly steamed suet pudding made in a working-class kitchen. Number 12. Tripe and onions. The dish that divided Britain. Pale, honeycombed slabs of cow stomach simmered in milk with onions until tender, then thickened with a little flour and seasoned with white pepper. In Lancashire, tripe shops served it steaming from behind glass counters. Children wrinkled noses, but fathers ate with quiet conviction. The texture was soft, almost silky when cooked right, and the mild flavor absorbed the sweetness of the onions and the richness of the milk. Over 300 tripe shops operated in Greater Manchester in the 1950s. By the 1980s, a handful remained. The dish could not survive changing tastes, but those who loved it never found a substitute. Number 11. Peas pudding. Dried split peas were boiled for hours with a ham bone, then mashed with butter and pepper until smooth and golden. In the northeast, it was served alongside boiled ham and stuffed into stotties, the thick, round bread rolls that were a meal in themselves. The earthy sweetness of the peas and the smokiness of the ham created a combination so satisfying that miners carried it underground as fuel for the shift. Peas pudding was ancient, cheap, and deeply nourishing. The supermarket versions that eventually appeared in plastic tubs bore no resemblance to the real thing. Number 10. Meat and potato pie. Short crust pastry filled with chunks of braising beef, diced potato, and thick onion gravy. Baked until the crust turned golden and the filling bubbled through the steam vents. In Lancashire and Yorkshire, pie shops sold them hot from the oven, wrapped in paper, eaten walking home from the mill. The pastry shattered at the first bite, giving way to the soft, savory filling beneath. Every family had its recipe. Every street had its favorite shop. The mass-produced versions that later filled supermarket shelves were tasteless imitations, their pastry soggy and their fillings thin. The real thing died with the high street bakers who made them. Number 9. Spotted dick. Suet pudding studded with currants, steamed until dense and fragrant. Served in thick slices with a river of custard poured from a jug. The suet gave the pudding a richness that no butter-based sponge could match, and the currants burst sweet against the savory dough. Children waited impatiently for the basin to be turned out, the steam rising and the custard pooling around it. It was the pudding that crowned the week, proof that even in the hardest times, there could be sweetness. Number 8. Rabbit stew. Before myxomatosis devastated the wild population, and before chicken became cheap, rabbit was the poor family's protein. Bought for under a shilling at the market, jointed and browned in dripping, then simmered with onions, carrots, and a sprig of thyme until the meat fell from the bone. The broth turned pale and fragrant, and a few dumplings dropped in for the final half hour, stretching the meal even further. Children picked at the delicate bones. Mothers served the meatiest pieces to fathers who had worked the longest shifts. One rabbit fed 6. No restaurant stew has ever tasted as honest. Number 7. Hot pot. Layers of sliced potato, onion, and neck of lamb arranged in a heavy pot and baked for hours until the top potatoes crisped golden and the layers beneath dissolved into the rich, fatty juices of the meat. The top crust was the prize, fought over at every table. The lamb neck, one of the cheapest cuts available, became meltingly tender through the slow bake, and the potatoes absorbed every drop of flavor. The whole dish cost less than 2 shillings and could feed a family of 7. It was the taste of the industrial north, as essential to those towns as the mills and the rain. Number 6. Jam roly-poly. Suet pastry rolled flat, spread thick with strawberry jam, rolled tight, wrapped in a cloth, and steamed until the kitchen windows fogged and the pudding swelled sticky and sweet. Sliced into thick rounds and served with custard so thick it coated the back of a spoon. The suet made the pastry rich and tender, nothing like the dry, crumbly versions that appeared in later decades. School canteens served it weekly, and children cheered when the dinner lady brought it out. The taste of jam roly-poly is inseparable from the memory of childhood itself. Number 5. Fish and chips from the pan, not the chippy. Homemade. Your mother made a batter from flour, salt, and water, sometimes with a splash of beer if your father was not looking. She dipped fillets of cod or haddock and lowered them into a deep pan of dripping so hot it crackled on contact. The batter puffed golden and impossibly crisp, sealing the fish inside a shell that shattered at the first bite. Chips were cut thick from floury potatoes and fried twice in the same dripping. The first fry cooked them through. The second fry, at a higher heat, turned the outsides golden and crunchy. Wrapped in newspaper with salt and malt vinegar, eaten at the table or standing in the kitchen. No chippy on earth could match what that pan of dripping produced. Number 4. Corned beef hash. Tinned corned beef, diced with boiled potatoes and onion, fried in a heavy pan until a dark, crunchy crust formed on the bottom. The trick was patience, leaving the hash to sit without stirring, so that the bottom layer turned almost burnt, caramelized, and deeply savory. Mothers served it with pickled red cabbage and a fried egg on top, the yolk breaking golden over the crispy hash. A single tin stretched to feed 4 or 5. It was the Tuesday supper that nobody complained about, the one meal that landed on the table and emptied every plate within minutes. Number 3. Sausage casserole. Thick pork sausages browned in dripping, then baked slowly with tinned tomatoes, onions, and baked beans until the sauce thickened and clung to every sausage. Served with crusty bread to mop up the rich tomatoey gravy. The sausages split and caramelized in the oven, their skins crisping while the inside stayed juicy and herby. A pound of sausages cost 1 6 in 1955 and fed the family with bread alongside. The whole house smelled of it by 5:30, drawing children in from the street and fathers through the back door. Simple. Cheap. Better than anything with a French name. Number 2. Cheese and potato pie. Boiled potatoes, mashed with butter and strong cheddar, were piled into a dish, topped with more cheese and baked until the top turned golden and bubbling. Some mothers added a layer of sliced onion beneath the potato. Others stirred in a spoonful of mustard. The crust of browned cheese on top was the only garnish it needed. Served with baked beans and a few slices of bread, it was the vegetarian supper before anyone used that word. Children scraped the dish clean. The crispy cheese edges were prized off and eaten last, saved like treasure. Number 1. Sunday roast with all the trimmings. This was the meal that defined working-class Britain. A joint of beef, lamb, or pork bought from the butcher on Saturday morning, roasted slowly in the oven while the house filled with a warmth that started in the kitchen and reached every room. Yorkshire puddings risen tall and crisp, roast potatoes golden in beef dripping, carrots and swede mashed with butter, cabbage boiled until just tender, thick gravy made from the pan juices, thickened with flour and darkened with a splash of gravy browning. The family sat together. Fathers carved, mothers served. Children reached for the crispiest potato. The whole meal cost a few shillings, but it tasted like everything that mattered. No restaurant has ever matched it, because no restaurant has ever had what that table had. Family, tradition, and the quiet pride of a mother who turned a cheap joint and a bag of vegetables into the best meal any of them would ever eat. These 30 suppers tell the story of a Britain that cooked with instinct, thrift, and love. Try one this week. Just one. See if your grandmother was wrong.